We have become obsessed in business with faster and more. There's more that we're obsessed with, but those two in particular, our entire systems and processes are rewarding speed, and we should where we can. The reason they don't do the extra double click is because it's not built into how we do projects anymore. There's no time for that to give people, right? We used to build projects with apprentices built into the model. They were allowed to take longer, they were slower, they were figuring it out. We didn't build the client at the same level for those folks. That's all been squeezed out for cheaper, faster, etc. So we really need to be intentional about projects where we can give people the time to do that work. And when given that opportunity, most will go there because they do want to have the richness.
Neil, it's really great to have you here. It was awesome to connect through the Alberta connection and be able to talk about learning, especially given you're doing so much cutting edge things at Deloitte also. So thanks for joining.
Well, I'm honored, and Vince, I got to give you kudos on. I've enjoyed some of your past podcasts, so any conversation with you is going to be worth our time. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. Why don't we dive right in? The thing that I really wanted to start with is topic that we talked about last time, and then I've also seen you write about it a little bit recently, this concept of apprenticeship and why it's more and more important. Let's start there. So I'm curious, what are the biggest challenges that you see in talent management and talent development today? How is it impacted by the general trends that are going on? And how does that link to the need for apprenticeship?
Where we are today, there's this general sense in our profession, professional services, where our people are our product, that as junior, our model has been pretty. We're a 180 something year old organization. Our model's been pretty steady. Back in 1860, whatever it was, we would have said apprenticeship is the primary way in which we develop. In that case, it was auditing railroads. But the way we built talent was nobody's done this before, so we're going to do it a little bit together, and you're going to learn on the job. There is no sort of we hire and you're ready immediately. Apprenticeship has always been part. But as AI has come on board, as we start to see emerging new talent models, new ways of getting the work done, and new work really showing up, the need for this ability to sort of you do one and you watch, or I'll do one, you watch, we'll do one together, then you do one, I'll watch, and then
You doing your own?
you're on, right, has become even more important, because as much as the knowledge is ubiquitous and available, the apprenticeship is literally around the how would we apply this and how will you tackle the context around this. And with our clients, it's, you might have the technical answer, but do you understand when someone double clicks, where are we going with this? Why are we presenting this particular solution versus another one? AI will have a perspective, but then that's not what they're hiring us for. They can get that answer themselves. So it really is around how do we, instead of hollowing out the expertise, which is, I think, what AI is doing for our junior practitioners, is they have the easy button answer, but there's no depth to it. When you double click, it's like, oh, you're as informed as I am, as opposed to like, we've actually done this 24 times in 15 different industries kind of construct, dragging our junior folks along to experience it, see it, not necessarily lead it, but to be able to feel it. There's no safe place to practice anymore. I mean, apprenticeship is that vehicle for us. It really is this construct around where does the expertise sit? Who wants to develop? It's skill based. So what skill are we looking to apprentice in? Who's got the skill? Who wants the skill? Put them together and let them do their thing. It's not a program as much as it's like a Tinder for business.
Right. Tender for business. I like that. To your point, more than ever, it seems like the more experienced leaders helping newer colleagues understand how they think, how they judge different outputs, what differentiates from the thing that looks good but isn't actually good from AI into something that actually clients would want you to create is the challenge. One of the things I have noticed, and this trend started like, I think from COVID, apprenticeship becoming harder and harder to do. Like I remember I actually was at McKinsey when COVID broke out, and then I left the firm at the end of 2020. But obviously I've kept in touch with a lot of my colleagues there. And there was this growing sort of statements from leaders that, hey, our young colleagues are not developing as fast right now. Like we're not working very closely. And so I think sort of there's a erosion of apprenticeship that I sort of was seeing when initially remote work was going on. How is that going on right now from what you're seeing? Like is apprenticeship actually coming back up, or are you struggling to reintroduce apprenticeship at the level you need?
It's this beautiful swell of work from home, work in the office. There's no doubt it's harder to apprentice on some of these things remotely. And it's in the simplicity of like in the flow of work. Do I have to book a meeting with you to bounce an idea off, or can I just call you over to my desk and say, look at my screen, will not compute, right? Pricing tool, whatever it is. And having someone look over your shoulder and just be like, oh, I see what's going on. Can you just open this and that? And then this is what you have to watch out for. Done. Don't need a 30-minute Teams meeting or Zoom meeting, just a quick in the flow. There are ways to do it. And so we are testing what does hybrid look like, but also taking the courage as leaders to say, you know what, if we're apprenticing for the next 3-4 months, let's co-locate, like let's do this together, and asking for that time as the best career move that someone could make. And if they're not in, then don't invest as a guide. It's a little bit like having the courage to declare, this is what I think it's going to take. Here's what the apprenticeship will feel like. Are you in? And count the cost sort of like both have to be in the game, and it's not a one-way ticket. So we're encouraging our leaders and, shaping our leaders to think that way about if you understand the work, you know which things can be apprenticed virtually and which things actually, like, we just need to co-locate and do. And sometimes that co-location is with a client. If all three are virtual, then fine, and we're apprenticing on how to manage the room that is virtual, which is also a skill that needs to be learned. But very much, apprenticeship has a feel of it's a human process, and AI is enabling in some cases. We do have some work that's apprenticed by AI. The guide is AI, a prepackaged agent. But in most cases, it's a human to human experience. And, one of the biggest challenges is our best experts are sometimes the hardest teachers. Like they forget so much of where the starting point is. One of my favorite studies out of Harvard around this idea of like the curse of expertise, and the example that's used of a guitar teacher. The best way to get a guitar teacher to go back to a beginner's mindset is have them play left-handed instead of right-handed. And you forget how the strings just don't make a sound if you can't press proper. Like that's the start of the process. You skip that step because you just assume, well, just put your finger on this fret and push. Well, the learner doesn't have the same calluses on their finger as you, so it feels quite different. When you flip the guitar, oh yes, right. That's what they're struggling with right now, is just to get the finger built up to the place where it can be used. We are trying to find the way to flip the guitar, find the guides who understand what the beginner is experiencing, and those are the best guides. They may or may not be the most experienced in that field, but they do know how to teach this skill the best.
That's fascinating. I love the idea of how do we flip the guitar. Such a good sort of analogy. One of the things you mentioned is how do you bring someone who is not such an expert so they can put themselves in the shoes of the beginner. Have you seen other ways to flip the guitar in the professional services context? I'm curious.
Yeah, we have an obsession. There's this bias built into how we build talent that partners are the penultimate, they know the most. But we've started to see, with all that's coming down the pipe in the new ways of working and AI, et cetera, that we need to reverse mentor as much, if not more, to get our partners up to speed on different ways to get work done and stitch work together differently. That there's nothing like that. This is the way we've always done it to be the death knell of the future. So apprenticeship is often associated with hierarchy, flipping the script on that and actually saying, you know what, this is skill by skill. And some of these skills are best known by our juniors, and they need to be the guide and you're the apprentice. This is not that all senior people are guides and all junior people are apprentices. It's much more of an organic process. That script flip really helps people get in the right headspace. And then secondly, the assumption that our partners are the best teachers is also, it's interesting. At our Deloitte University, we bring in retired partners to tell stories. And the most common comment that comes back is relevance check for these stories that are coming of, like, they're powerful and meaningful for a day that was, that story from 1980. That's not even how work is done today. So you're not the best guide in that case. And the humility to understand that is important for us as a partnership to realize the days of us believing we have to have all the answers is a big part of the shift that's going on in the market right now. Like you're a curator of where the answers are and you don't have to be the owner of.
I love that. One of the things that I think is challenging, and you were starting to say about the hollowing of the sort of the role and so on. So one of the ways I describe the challenge that has to be solved now is to shorten the time it takes to write up the experience curve, which is I started my career at McKinsey. I had 2 to 3 years as a business analyst, churning through slides and doing Excel models to build pattern recognition. A lot of the things that gave me pattern recognition, where I have to like struggle through to learn, is to your point, now I have an easy button to do. And I think there's a real question mark, and I don't know what the right answer is, honestly, is whether that struggle was necessary, strictly necessary to build a judgment.
Yeah.
Or if there's a better way to write up the experience curve in a much more efficient way. What is your viewpoint on that? Like when work has become so easy for the early careers, but you still need to be able to look at something and critique. Like, how are you teaching those things to your people?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? I mean, I think it looks right.
Right, right.
So I mean, it even might look better. The outcome might look better and faster. But if you get it's about depth, right? It's the why. So a big part of our apprenticeship focus is on understanding the why. Why did AI recommend this as your top choice? Do you understand the rationale and the depth behind? And the easy button is on the answer. There is no easy button for rewiring this. And I know you've had other guests on talk about the neuroscience of learning, and friction and struggle is a gift. That is where the rewiring happens. You know, my personal AI agent is built so it will not give me the answer. It will work with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, work with me on the struggle of how, like, why won't you just give me the answer, right? And there's times when we need that, but most times in our development phases, we need the struggle. We've toyed with what if in our first at an analyst or a business analyst or a junior level, what if we didn't give them AI in their first couple of years so they struggle with understanding the processes, what's underneath it. It's almost like we won't give you the calculator. You have to do
Arithmetic for a while.
you have to use long division until you're like you just know the why things work, and then when you punch it in and the calculator gives you an odd answer, you'll be like, that's not right. That's the part that differentiates craftsmanship from anybody can do it, right? And it's those nuances that I came out of oil and gas, and we got to a place where we put sensors on everything, right? And we had all the data that we need, but there's some things that were going on in a pump or in a pipeline where the guy who's been doing this for 40 years puts his hand on the pump and he knows instantly it's this bushing or this is what's going on. And he doesn't need a sensor to tell him. He just knows because of the experience he's had looking at pump after pump after pump. It's that equivalent in our profession that we're really trying to get to, of like, you know, you have an intuition and you have a gut and you have experience that you can bring to testing. And who's, even with my own team, tons of great content comes at me from AI. And when I ask the questions of like, why did we go from here to here on this topic? If the answer is, well, that's what AI suggested, like, fail. You need to understand it. Yes, it can be informed by, but I need you to understand why is it taking on this path, the answer in the project. And that doesn't come, there is no easy button for that. So my belief is there's an easy button to outcomes. They're hollow and cheap. It's depth. And in our business, the depth and breadth is what we get paid for. So yes, any business can get the same answer. The question is they won't understand why. They also won't know the pitfalls, pros, cons of experientially. How will that play out in our business? And what have we seen that AI can't
Right.
anticipate yet either?
I work with a lot of different sort of leaders in consulting firms, and they say, hey, it's really hard to get our younger colleagues to not just copy paste the answer. There's too many times where I'm like looking at this and like, this is mostly a copy paste. And then you ask a question they can answer, but you ask one level deeper and they can't answer it because they're not intellectually owning the answer. How are you creating the environment to make sure that people embrace the struggle and actually do it when, ChatGPT is literally a browser tab away for them?
we'll get philosophical here. There's a deeper driver to this, which is we have become obsessed in business with faster and more. There's more that we're obsessed with, but those two in particular. So our entire systems and processes are rewarding speed, and we should where we can. The reason they don't do the extra double click is because it's not built into how we do projects anymore. There's no time for that to give people, right? We used to build projects with apprentices built into the model, and they were allowed to take longer. They were slower. They were figuring it out. We didn't bill the client at the same level for those folks. That's all been squeezed out for cheaper, faster, etc. So we really need to, I think, be intentional about projects where we can give people the time to do that work. And when given that opportunity, most will go there because they do want to have the richness. I missed the mark post pandemic. We expected, for example, all of our senior folks to want to come back in the office and be, let's go back to the way it was. But in our case, a lot of the push for getting back in the office and doing apprenticeship was from our juniors. I expected them to be perfectly happy working from home. Turns out the seniors were perfectly happy
Yeah.
pounding out edicts from their desk and taking care of their pets, etc. Right. So the flip switched a little bit in terms of like our juniors want the time to apprentice and learn the why and underneath it, but are being driven because of our processes and demands for faster to get the answer quickly, as opposed to getting the right answer and understand why you got that answer. So it's on our leadership to design work, pace work, and work with our clients on, do you want a quick answer or do you want something that's got depth? Depending on the work and what you're working on, you can be intentional about that.
I love that. I definitely agree with that. The one thing I would add probably is what it reminds me of is I feel like the proof of work, to your point, back in the day was volume, because if you have a lot of volume, you like presumably have to work through it.
Yeah.
But I think there's a real opportunity to redefine proof of work as actually concision. Like the shorter and the more compact something is, the more likely that you put in thought.
It's true. I mean, that's what Einstein said from the beginning, right? If you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you haven't done the work. And the longer the book, the less likely they've synthesized the thinking, right? And so those 50-page decks have no place anymore.
Right. Like it's like a killer executive summary, like the killer 5 points. Have you nailed that? I think is one of the things.
That's where the real salience is, and then the conversation.
Right.
As opposed to all our thinking is in a PowerPoint or in a presentation. It's really in here. PowerPoint was always intended to be a guide for the conversation as opposed to the documentation of all things that are truth in that space, right? And so much of today's problems are not solved by a few individuals. It's a co-creation. Different lenses have to come to the table and have the right conversation. That's your job, is curating the right people in the room to solve it, not to bring a deck that solves it. So building the skills to contribute in those types of conversations is what we're apprenticing in, as opposed to let's get the right thing on paper that we've nailed it, because A, it never was, and B, it never will be. Even with AI's help, there's just so much nuance to the context that requires humans to be in the loop. If I skip ahead 15 years from now, we figured out what tools we're going to use. We've all landed on what the ecosystem looks like, and we all have access that's needed for our businesses. The ultimate democratization of knowledge is available. The differentiation then in business gets back to what it always has been. We're in a messy middle right now, but once all of this is in place, then we get back to who brings the value. And it's going to be the human component of that. Yes, we're all using these tools. Maybe we do it faster, but we will value the differentiators, which will be human.
AI is like a commodity at this point.
It is, yeah.
The distinctive humans.
It's an amazing one. Like it's the breadth and the evolution of it. It's not a static tool. It's ever evolving. And so but as you think about it, the new world is in place. What will differentiate it? Maybe. I don't think the future of the world is whoever has the most money gets the best tools. Maybe we get to that in terms of learning language models that have better data that's only available to a few versus access to all. Maybe we get there, and that is one version of the future. But I also think there's a world where we get back to what's beautiful about who we are as humans and why work exists, that contribution to make something better. I spent some time recently at our Smart Factory, which is located in Montreal here in Canada, and it's a collation of a number of the latest and greatest in the industry of for warehousing, where those tools and technology available. And within about half an hour of seeing this demonstrated, I realized it's amazing, and I would never want to work in a warehouse that used all of this technology, because the human in that space, first of all, there's maybe one or two of them, and their jobs, they are the machine now of pushing a button to stop or a green button to start, and then it does it. All the work is done. We are wired as humans in a space, for example, in a warehouse where you have to go and select materials and bring them and put them in a box and then ship it out, right? The fun in that warehouse is the hunter-gatherer construct of, like, I get to go and find these things across the warehouse and assemble them and then send them off, and the sense of accomplishment is there. The new version of that job is mind-numbing. Push the button, the robot goes, sends the box, wraps the box, makes the box.
Yeah, does everything. Yeah.
And you're really the stopgap. You're doing the same thing over and over again with no brain stimulation in a meaningful way. It's an over exaggeration, but if we're truly making humans more robotic and robots more human world, then I think we'll apprentice very differently than what I believe, which is that ultimately the differentiator in almost every industry is the human, and differentiating where do we need to let AI in robotic form take on some of the work, and where do we say this is ultimately human. Is it a great world if your AI is buying from my AI and the relationship we have is separate and neutral? I don't think that's any fun. For the first time in our history, we've had a number of people show up. One example is as an avatar. So in the screening interview, the avatar showed up.
Like the interviewee didn't show up. They sent their avatar?
Yeah, they sent their avatar.
Oh my God.
And the premise of that is, you're not sending me the hiring manager. I'm not sending me. When the hiring manager's in the room, I will show up.
Oh my
So
God.
initially our response was like, goodbye, click.
Yeah.
But if you double click under that, there's a real interesting human behind that
That
I
is
would
so-
love to talk to.
I haven't heard of that, but that's so
So
interesting.
that's example number one. Example number two is the human shows up with their AI agent and says, we are a package. So if you're onboarding me, you also have to onboard my agent, because we get things done together. And here's examples. It's a show me kind of piece. And so what used to be an HR process is now an HR IT process, because we have to figure out how does that fit into our
That is so fascinating.
architecture, right? So that's example number two. And then the third is those who've played with digital twin
Yeah.
concept. So it's not just the avatar, but they literally have a digital twin that's in multiple interviews at the same time through this process. And so it's a whole new world for what work looks like and what it would mean to apprentice someone in that space.
Fascinating. I guess, we've chatted a lot about sort of the why behind the apprenticeship so far. I wanted to talk a little bit about the how, especially at the scale of Deloitte, which is massive. And apprenticeship requires a lot of intentionality from both the person who's apprenticing and the person who's getting apprenticed. Can you share a little bit how you think about scaling apprenticeship in the organization and actually incentivizing and supporting both sides to show up fully?
Yeah, the more I spend in my role as a chief learning officer, the more I understand my job is not about creating or delivering content. It is about curating an environment where great learning is taking place. So in the application of apprenticeship, my job is to truly make sure our mindset of everyone in Deloitte is this idea of apprenticeship is who we are. It's part of it's how we do work. If you're at a stage in your career and you know this skill, you're looking for others to teach this to. And if you don't have the skill, you're looking for those that have it so you can learn. And if both parties are doing that, you scale without programmatizing it. When I say the Tinder of business, we're really trying to create what's the environment that people need, those seekers and those with the skills need to connect. It's not my job to try to capture from each business, what do you want apprenticed in? And then us to put some sort of programmatizing around it. It's much more of, as you do this work, how are you going to use apprenticeship to elevate our game and pass on the legacy of this firm to the next generation? That is part of the expectation of every leader in our organization, is to be doing that. and you're evaluated against that. Some do it better than others, for sure, as is the case with almost every skill. But being very intentional about the culture and the environment in which these developmental constructs take place, including apprenticeship, is the focus that I have, less about the tactical making it happen in a certain way. We hire smart people, empowering them to do their thing and connect with each other with an inherent belief that makes us better. It has for 180 years. We don't have to programatize it. It's very much just put good people in a room with problems and they figure it out. And then we share that knowledge. That's as simple as it is. I've been on 3 formal apprenticeships in my life. The first one was with my dad. He's a master craftsman finishing carpenter. 2 years ahead of my college education, I apprenticed with him. For the first 3 months of that apprenticeship, he refused to give me a hammer. This was the days before nail guns existed. All he gave me to do was sweep behind him. There's a lot of sawdust created by a finishing carpenter. My job was like the janitor, sweep and watch. And I was really frustrated because I'm like, I want to pick, I could pick up a hammer and practice nailing stuff together, but not on any real work that was going to be client built. So one day I kind of was like frustrated. I'm not your sweeping slave. I'm trying to apprentice here. And he said, Neil, a hammer is an amazing tool. In the hands of a master craftsman, it builds beautiful things. In the hands of a hack, it can take down a barn. It can ruin a piece of wood that's taken 300 years to grow. So I want to make sure you're ready before I give you this tool. And as it relates to all the tools that are coming into our businesses now, that weighs on me in terms of what does readiness look like to use these tools? Because in the hands of craftsmen, they're beautiful. In the hands of a hack, they can do a lot of damage, put our people in jail. In our case, there's a lot of risk to not being ready to use powerful tools. And so a big part of that apprenticeship thing is readiness check. We talk about the quality, but there's also the risk side of this, of what is responsible use, and the importance of being able to get people to a stage where we believe we give you red seal approval to use this particular tool with our clients versus you're just learning it.
That really resonates, and in the case of AI, it's a really interesting question, which also links to what you said before, like should we give everyone access to AI in the early days? Do you see any patterns in leaders who are very good at apprenticing others versus not? And also on the flip side, people are great apprentices who learn very quickly versus not. And like, do you try to teach some of those mindsets and behaviors so that their curve is as steep as it can be?
Yeah, to your point, I mean, the big question is, can you hack time to competence?
Right.
What is the recipe for that? We do put on what we call guide training. So anybody who's going to be the guide, teaching them things like the curse of expertise, teaching them how people learn, teaching them the power of spaced repetition, teaching them how to get things down to bite size and understandable. And the most important thing, though, is we've always said this in our, everybody wants or thinks they can be a coach, but it's not true. Everybody can't be a coach. And the biggest part of that is mindset of like your why. Why would you apprentice someone junior to you? And the most successful are the ones that really care about the outcome, both the outcome of the work that's being done and also the outcome of that apprentice getting to the next level and feel a deep sense of intrinsic satisfaction of helping others along, mostly driven because that's what someone did for them. Is this pay it forward belief of like someone did it for you, you should do it. And the joy that comes from that is the reward, as opposed to like, if I'm going to apprentice, I need it reflected on my pay. The good apprentice guides don't care about that. It's the biggest trigger for me is when they say, well, is there a bonus if I do this well? We're like, no, this is the job.
You have a dual mission.
Totally. You leave a legacy. Someone left this legacy firm to you, and you have this same accountability. I'm a huge believer in this concept that our experiences shape our beliefs shape our actions, and our actions get results. Most executive teams focus on results and actions, but actually the beliefs are some of the biggest drivers in apprenticeship that you're getting after, of the teaching why. So that the belief is we do it this way for a reason. There are a bunch of steps you can skip, but here's why we don't. Or there's a bunch of extra things you could add in, but they don't add value, and here's why. That's invaluable training that gets at the undergirding beliefs so that actions are anchored in something other than because I said so, which there are some things in our world where that still exists.
Wow. Yeah, can't agree more with what you said. And it reminds me of, at McKinsey, you definitely, we talked about sort of dual mission, but some people, to your point, are intrinsically just motivated to want to be a good leader, and they get energy from doing that. And others, it's like really not natural for them to do it. And I definitely think that recognizing, hey, like different people have different strengths, and some people are just like much better leaders and coaches, can sort of pull the load, I think also makes sense.
Totally. Some of our rainmakers, as we'd call them, are the worst.
Right, right. Because they're very results driven, right? So they're like very
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
like
This
getting,
is taking too long. You are slowing me down. Like if that's the mindset of like it does, apprenticeship does slow us down. But again, that disease of faster and more is becoming so ingrained in what success looks like. That was not always the case. Quality, yes, we always talked about that triangle of quality, speed, cost. But now we've just presumed speed has always got to be high, and then we have to figure out how to get the others done, as opposed to the trade-offs there that are still very real, even in a world of AI.
the concept of speed is a good sort of segue to the last sort of thing I wanted to talk to you about. And I know you started to write about this too, I believe. This concept of unlearning, where the behaviors and the mindset that served you well, that helped you become successful, can be becoming things that really hold you back, especially because the world is changing so much.
Yep.
Yeah, I would love to hear your definition of, okay, what in your mind, what is unlearning? Why do you think it's so crucial? And how do you incentivize people to embrace this idea of unlearning?
So I'll take a very clinical definition first. The premise I think I have and that I'm writing about is that the highest form of learning is actually unlearning. When we build our careers as professionals and experts, adding learning is about adding new concepts and growing as growth is more. But some of the most insightful moments in my own career have been when I've actually taken something away that served me in the past is getting in the way of me being able to move forward. Like unlearning is the process of atrophying pathways that have built over time in your executive function, that you do it in your sleep because you've done it so many times and you just know, like, these are the steps that make me successful. And when the team responds this way, here's how I react. It always works. That belief is going to limit your career growth. The hardest stage of unlearning is the recognition that you are on an autonomic pathway now around a certain example. So, think about all of the executive things that you do as a leader. There's your team leadership, there's your managing of budgets, there's the things where you're guiding the team and have an answer based on experience. Recognizing when some of those are now stale and based on a set of assumptions that no longer exist is the beginning of the unlearning. And then there's the intentional atrophying of your response. Stephen Covey always talked about the stimulus response and the gap in between. Unlearning is about being very intentional in that space of like atrophying and not letting your neuroplastic wire together, fire together, not letting it fire for a bit so that it atrophies and you're rebuilding a new way of thinking, which is much more anchored on curiosity and continuously seeking if there's a better way. Our brains do this naturally to conserve energy. If something's happened over and over and over again, we build a pathway so we don't have to think and use energy. The danger is that it starts applying that to anything that you do over and over again that may or may not be serving you. And so the intentionality for senior leaders to recognize and notice, where am I acting that's in autopilot? And is that still serving me, is the key to unlearning.
What would you say is the number one thing people have to unlearn today? Like, or maybe like in the context of Deloitte and professional services, is there like one behavior you keep on telling people we have to unlearn this sort of pattern?
Yeah, the belief that you know the answer because you've seen it 10 times before, and not holding on, like staying curious just a little bit longer. That's with our clients around, like really understand the context before you say, yes, this applies. I've done it 10 times and off you go. We're so quick to be, we
Yeah,
have a solution
sure.
that fits your problem
Yeah.
instead of really falling in love with the problem for a bit and just letting it soak so that you can bring your best to it. The second thing I would say is in team leadership, the ultimate Harry Potter sorting hat exercise with our teams. Oh, you're one of those. You're one of
Right,
those.
right. Like you are like this. You sort of like make quick judgment.
Yeah. And then treating people like once you've decided, some leaders are, it's almost impossible to reshape how you think about that particular person. And as a result, you might be limiting the opportunity to tap into all of the skills that they have. And I get why, as leaders, we really want to focus on what is your superpower. And I want that to help our team be better. But they might have multiple other talents and skills that you're missing because that's who you see them as, and they become your go-to for this thing. And so leaders being really intentional about how do you learn about your folks who are growing and learning and adding new skills all the time, and don't assume that they're staying static and that their careers are not based on how well they do the thing that you want them to do. They're based on whole person development that's going on, and the beauty that's in that, that's so human. So those are two that I would put forward on the client side and our internal side.
Neil, thanks so much for joining today. This was a great conversation. Made me also think a lot about our own team, the work we do with our clients. Also made me reminisce about my consulting days too. I appreciate you joining. Yeah, I'm continuing to follow your thought leadership, the book you're writing, and everything else. And hopefully this is the start of many conversations like this. And so yeah, appreciate you sharing your insights today.
Likewise, Vincent, keep doing what you're doing. You're helping even folks like me learn every day. So you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.